I was very critical of some comments from gubernatorial candidate Semi Bird. And in full disclosure, I am supporting Dave Reichert for governor. He is one of the rare instances where I have offered, I didn't really offer a technical endorsement, but I've said many times that I think he's the only chance Republicans might have ever again to win the governor's mansion, at least in the next, in the foreseeable future. And yes, that's because he has name recognition. Yes, that's because he's won multiple elections in King County. And so, yes, there are some practical reasons. And the overarching reason is I don't want Bob Ferguson to be the governor. So I'm going to support the person who I think has the best chance of beating him. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be fair to Semi Bird on the show. And that doesn't mean that if Dave Reichert has some stumbles, we're not going to point him out. I mean, Nicole, what were we saying on the show the other day? Where the hell is Dave? Why isn't he out campaigning?
Right.
We're talking about his social media sucks and his website sucks. So yeah, we're going to be critical of him. I'm not beholden to any candidate. And so, Semi Bird, he's always welcome on our show and to respond to criticism. And I had criticized him on Thursday because of something he said at the KTH Freedom Series in Everett last week. I was there and I was waiting in the wings for my turn to go on stage when he said this.
When we talk about splitting the vote, I came out in November of last year, just to make that very clear. I've been running for governor and campaigning all across the state, all up and down the I-5 corridor, the peninsula, the islands, and all throughout eastern Washington. So I was already out there running. We should be asking ourselves why we are in this situation. Who put us in this situation? When you already had a candidate, why are we not talking about that?
Yeah, so to me and a lot of other people in my defense, that really sounded like how dare Dave Reichert enter the race when I'd already been campaigning, which of course is just not how this works. And so I criticized and I was very confused about those statements and also a tweet that he had sent out that I had a couple issues with. It seemed to me to be suggesting that he's like the only candidate with a resume to be able to do the job, when Dave Reichert served for a long time in law enforcement, many years in Congress, which does prepare someone for elected office and for higher office, like the governor's office. He said on Twitter, while some are blindly focused on the notion of backing a candidate that can win based on big money and donor relationships and name brand recognition, we the people will be voting for the candidate with the resume and experience to actually do the job. Experience matters, and we the people are ready to replace career politicians with career Americans. It's time to put the people over politics. And the issue I took with that is I'm not blindly, and I think there's a lot of people who don't blindly support Dave Reichert just because he has name recognition, who might actually genuinely think he would do a good job. And actually think that he has a chance of beating Bob Ferguson. And so I don't think it's fair to characterize that as blind support. And I also took issue with the phrase of we the people in a way that suggests that the only people who that includes are Semi Bird supporters. We the people, whether you like it or not, includes everyone in this wonderful country of ours, even the far, 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 far fringe socialists. They're still we the people. So anyway, I invited Semi Bird on. He was nice enough to join us to talk a little bit about my criticism and also some of his real frustrations with what feels like a party structure designed to work against candidates like him. Semi Bird, welcome back to Undivided.
Thank you. It's great to be with you again, Brandi.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I had some criticism for you last week, and so we always want to give people an opportunity to respond to it. So here you are. So we just played the clip for folks. You know what the clip is. When I listened to it, and actually I was standing backstage. I was lurking right behind you, and I was like wide-eyed, like, did he just say that? I took that to mean that kind of how dare Dave Reichert enter the race when I was already campaigning.
Yeah, no, and I really do appreciate you inviting me on to give clarity. And I have to say, I was surprised that you took it that way, but I respect it, right? I mean, and that's just the way things work out sometimes. But no, not at all. I would say it would be preposterous for me to say that. And here's why. Number one, even with our first interview, we kind of talked about this and in terms with other candidates. There was candidates that were in this race before I got in. So if that was the case, well, then I could make the argument or someone can make the argument, well, Semi Bird shouldn't be here. So no, not at all. That was not my intent. I didn't even have that as a thought. So that's why I was too surprised, which is why we're here together today so that I can bring clarity. So no, Dave has every right to be in this race, as does everyone else that's in this race. That's just the way the system works and the way it should be working. We have a primary for this very reason. And so I'm looking forward to going into detail to explain why I said what I said and what I really meant by that. And again, as you know, and your listeners know, I would never say, well, Dave should not be here, right? I was first come, first serve. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and please, this is an opportunity for you to clear it up, because I wasn't the only one backstage. There was a whole group of us, and we're looking at each other like, what? And so I'm certainly not the only one who took it that way. But it did come across as maybe not literally Dave should not be in the race, but that he's to blame if there's any vote splitting. So clarify what the point of that remark was.
Yeah, and Brandi, you and your listeners may or may not be aware, and so I don't want to make an assumption. But I'll ask, are you aware that very high profile individuals have been approaching me, asking me to step out, to step aside, to make way for Dave Reichert? Have you been aware of that?
I don't know any specific high profile individuals who have come to you. No, I'm not privy to that. So who?
So let's go into detail, because I think facts matter.
Sure.
So specifically, United States Representative Kathy McMorris Rodgers.
Okay.
Had me drive all the way to the Davenport Hotel to meet with her. Wonderful lady, brilliant, kind. And we had a great conversation. And she was very pleasant. And then she said, we have been wanting Dave Reichert to run for years. And Simi, we think if you would consider stepping aside or into this position, you could still be in the team, etc. So let's take that as it is. Here I am running. Right. And that's what I was saying. I've been running since November, working really hard to get my message to the citizens of Washington State. Kathy McMorris Rodgers is not the only one that's asked me. But right after I left that meeting, I'm leaving Spokane and I get a call from Dave Reichert. And Dave, being kind and respectful as he is and always has been, which is why I would never insult the gentleman. Right. And so Dave asked me the same thing, because I remember when you interviewed him. And every now and then I'll watch the show, especially when someone sends me a clip. And so you had asked Dave, well, have you talked to Simi? And I believe Dave said, well, you know, we put out an invite and didn't match with the schedule. Well, my schedule is always open to Dave, always. And Dave called me within minutes of leaving the meeting with Kathy McMorris Rodgers to make the same ask. And it's not just Dave. There's been state representatives, state senators, big money donors have been nonstop asking Simi Burt to step aside. And I apologize for referring to myself in the third party. That's strange. But anyway, no, that's what we're looking at. So when we talk about name brand recognition and we talk about big money donors, I'm hoping that you and your listeners can empathetically perhaps understand why this is, I don't want to say sensitive, but why I am so passionate about ensuring that our citizens have a say-so, that they have a stake, so that it's not just what I refer to as the political establishment. Mm-hmm. When I say that, I mean no disrespect. These are good people. They just believe that it's important for them to make those controls, to put them in place to ensure, let's just say, so that we don't split the vote. And so when Jason Rance asked me the question, and you heard me say we should ask that question to those individuals, that's who I was referring to. So perhaps this gives you a little bit more context and an understanding to my words.
Yeah, I mean, but who cares, Simi, if people want you to drop out? I mean, you're your own person. It's not like Kathy McMorris Rodgers coming to you and saying, will you drop out, is like the death knell of your campaign. So, and actually, let me just skip past that, because I think there's a question that would get to the heart of all of this. The first time I had you in, I asked you, because Republicans are planning to do a nominating process for this position and others. And they're doing that so they don't wind up with a bunch of Republicans in the primary election, and then we send 2 Democrats forth to the general. You told me the first time we spoke that you would respect that nominating process. Has that changed?
No. Well, here's what I would say to this. What I said to you, and this is good because we recorded it, right? And I said, if it is clear that I am not winning, most definitely I would step out and support the candidate that is clearly winning. Those are my words. And I respect that. This is something important. And again, this goes to empathy and a clear-mindedness when you look at the scenario that we're talking about. Whether it's Kathy McMorris Rodgers or any other state political figure or any other large money donor, I hope that you and others can understand this is the political system of Washington State. I'm not naive. I think you understand I worked in intelligence, right? So I'm not a babes in the woods when it comes to understanding how systems work. My point is, when you go into a situation and you say that you will do the right, righteous, and honorable and ethical thing, when you see others that are coming together to influence adversely the election process, that gives me concern. That's the point I wanted to make for you and for your viewers or your listeners, to understand that my passion is to ensure that our constitutional process, as you said, and that I am fully aware of and how it works. It is the primary that citizens have an opportunity to choose who their candidate is. The citizens, the people of this nation and of the state, they, by definition of a constitutional republic, have the power to elect who they deem fit to represent them. Not people with a lot of money, not people with a lot of power and position. That is all I'm trying to maintain. And I'm very passionate about this. And I know that you had some engagements with those who have supported me and do support me. And I know there's comparisons between me and Lauren Culp. And I don't want to read into that to say, why is it this push to compare Simi Bird to Lauren Culp? Why do we hear things like MAGA, ultra MAGA, or far right wing? It's almost like we want to expect, or not want to expect, that we expect another word to come out, not from you, never. I know this. Deplorable, right?
I would never say that.
At what point in time are we going to start weaponizing supporters against the candidate? Here's what I believe is happening, Brandi. I believe, like me, that there are a lot of supporters in Washington state that are passionate about the Constitution, that are passionate about ensuring self-governance and returning to the principles of a constitutional republic. That is all I'm trying to do. So when you hear me speak out, as you heard me that night, I was sharing my passion for ensuring that the people have a voice. And right after you cut the clip off, and it just happened to be at that time, you would have heard me say that I just want to ensure that the people have a voice and that they are the ones who are choosing who their nominee is and not the establishment.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, if you watch the show, you know that I don't particularly like either party. I don't like the party structure. I don't like it for this reason, because it weeds out candidates that people might support. The same reason I support term limits, because you have someone like Nancy Pelosi who's been in office forever, and the party won't allow anyone else in the party to challenge her, and so it limits the options of voters. So we're in agreement with that. What I don't want is a Bob Ferguson governorship.
Yeah.
That is the most terrifying prospect for me. So while I'm not a Republican, I will do anything in my power and with my influence in this show to try to prevent that from happening. So I just want to clarify something you said, that if the party's nominating process, however people feel about the nominating process, if that comes up, they don't nominate you, you said that you would step aside if it's clear you're not winning. What is the measure of whether you're winning?
Yeah. And so here's how I would look at it. And speaking very honestly and plainly, as I always strive to do, I think I've described for you and to your listeners, there's a lot of things at work here behind the scenes in terms of who are the players in the party. Let's just say King County. The leadership of the Republican Party in King County is definitely not in support of Simi Bird. That was evidenced when I was disrespected at their Liberty dinner the other night. I'm not sure if you heard about that either.
I seem to have seen some sort of post about it, but tell us.
Yeah. So here's how that went down. When the MC that was chosen began to introduce, and by the way, again, has no ill reflection on Dave. This is nothing ill on Dave. Behind all the bidding paddles had Dave's logo on it, right? And so at the very beginning of the event, which I was in attendance, I was invited to participate. I was excited to be there. And we hear the MC, John Curley, say, and look at your paddles and on the back. And now I'm just summarizing. You'll see the logo of the next governor of Washington State, Dave Reichert. And Simi Bird is sitting there. And again, I'm not a sensitive little child. Again, I'm a big boy, right? I served in combat and done all that other stuff. But I hope that you and maybe others, through that process of empathy, can say, wow, is that really how the party should have welcomed me when Dave hasn't been endorsed and I haven't been endorsed? So in a situation like that, should I not expect fair representation? My answer would be yes.
Yes.
As the chairman of the Benton County Republican Party, I've been very clear. I don't bring Byrd for governor into my duties as chair because it's unethical and it renders me partial instead of impartial. So when you have that, and Brandi, I can go on. I just don't like to throw people under the bus.
I just want to make sure the question's answered. I'd also say, man, Semi, I haven't talked about this publicly, but the Benton County Republican Party invited me to speak at one of their dinners, and then I was told I wasn't pro-Semi Byrd enough, and so they canceled on me. So to suggest that this doesn't bleed into county parties, I disagree. If what you're describing is what happened in King County, that's ridiculous. Why would they invite you only to do that? That's an incredible insult. So I don't agree with that. But what is the barometer for whether you're winning in your eyes?
And that's subjective. And I'm going to quickly say something, by the way, Brandi. And I, me, if you ask for documents, you ask for email, I'll send it to you. I was the one who recommended you to the Benton County Republican Party to be our speaker. Just putting that out there, and I have the email. Okay, so that committee operated on their own. I'm sad that happened, just so that you understand. And I will send you that email just so that you get to know me even better.
No need. Just giving you an example of how I think it goes both ways.
Yes, it does. And so, no, the barometer in terms of I guess, deciding who is winning. Well, I think it would be clear. One of the things we're seeing right now in King County, there's been several straw polls in which every straw poll, my candidacy won. That surprised a lot of people. But that's probably because, as Jason Rantz stated, I have been doing something that is not typically done or ever been done by the Republican Party. I have been going into Seattle almost every day, every week since last year, going into the inner city, trying to connect with young people, minorities, finding that message of commonality of bringing back the rule of law, better schools, right? Cleaning up the homeless situation, bringing true compassion, fixing our mental health and addiction system. So when I say what does right look like in terms of winning, I would say those straw polls. And what are the citizens saying? Not a group of political pundits, but the citizens of Washington State. This is a slippery slope, and you yourself, my friend, said it. One of the reasons why you have that wonderful position where you can be independent and not have to operate in a two-party system because of how the party often operates. But if you're in my position, and when you make a statement months ago with good, righteous, sincere intent, and then you start to see how things are unfolding. Brandi, could you please understand how I may be feeling in looking at it objectively, strategically, to say, will Semi Byrd get a fair shake in the party system? And I don't have the answer to that. I do value our precinct committee officers. I really do. But this new delegation process, right, where we're going to have our delegates, this is something that has been changed. If you look at the individuals that are on that committee that are leads, they're not with Semi Byrd. The people who make the rules for this state
But maybe
party,
that's because they think Dave Reichert's a better candidate. Not any sort of ill intent, but they prefer Dave Reichert.
Yes. And by the way, for the record, I support and respect that. The fact that Dave Reichert is your candidate, I support and respect that. And why? Because you've always shown kindness to me. And I take that at face value with appreciation and respect.
Thank you. So, and for the record, if he isn't the guy that goes past the primary, as I said, all I care about is Bob Ferguson not winning. That's all I care about at the end of the day. And Semi, Dave asked me. You didn't ask me. You were campaigning 6 months before Dave. I never got a call from Semi Byrd's campaign saying, hey, here's this great guy. Here's what he's about. Will you support it? I did get that call from Dave Reichert's campaign. So,
and so typically, again, this could be my assumption. There's usually a process. And what happens if someone's been asked, they would weigh, right, the candidates. And I think you've been very clear. And you said it multiple times. And then even on the show, that drove us to this show, you had said that you believe that Dave Reichert is the candidate who can win. And I respect that.
Yeah.
And so does all the other people. Kathy believes that. Many state senators and representatives, which is why all of Olympia is supporting. And so, no, I think you are not alone in that belief with the name brand recognition and raising a lot of money. All I want to say is that I'm passionate about our Constitution. I'm passionate about Article 1, Section 1, which clearly states in our Washington State Constitution that power is inherent in the people. And this decision should go to the citizens of Washington State. And because I do understand the process, I support our primary process. And when we talk about Bob Ferguson, and that none of us want Bob Ferguson to win for very, very obvious reasons, we should be talking also fairly that there are 3 Democrats running for the same position right now, whereas on the Republican side, we have 2 primary, with giving respect to all those other candidates who have been running right out there doing their thing, and I respect that. But you have Hillary Franz, Mark Mullet, and Bob Ferguson, 3 current elected officials representing the Democrat Party, all raising a lot of money, right? $4 million, $800,000, $600,000, all raising a lot of money. And then on the conservative side, you have Dave and myself. And yes, Dave is doing great at raising a lot of money. And we already know why, because all of these individuals are part of that establishment donor base who made it very clear that they are in it for Dave. And I respect that. And they have every right to that.
I got to push back against that really quick. I know we're running short on time, but couldn't it also be, yes, there's some big donors behind him, but that he, served the state for years in law enforcement. People know him from his time in Congress. Couldn't it also be that there are regular we the people in Washington who like Dave Reichert, that his support is not just drummed up by big money donors in the establishment, that there are genuine people who prefer him as a candidate?
Brandi, I would go as far as to say, no, it's not. Could it be? But in fact, it is. Because I respect and honor Dave's record in terms of his service as a law enforcement official, a leader in law enforcement. So no, it's clear. Absolutely. There's people support Dave because he has served in law enforcement, one of the most noblest professions there and out there, and which I'm a big fan. So no, obviously I would agree 100%. Not could it be, but I will say there is, and there are people who support Dave because of who he is and his service as a law enforcement professional, his service in Congress. Whether you agree with his voting record or you don't agree, there are those who respect him for his service to his state. And I would be one also to say that I respect Dave Reichert for his service, especially as a law enforcement professional and all that he's given. So I don't hesitate in that. And I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to share that very clearly. Yeah. So again, all I want to do is represent everyday citizens that want a voice, that believe to getting back to self-governance, where it is we the people. And all I ask is for an empathetic understanding that there is a system at work. Yes, there are just good people who like Dave and support Dave. But again, that system is not there for Semi Bird, and that's fine. I don't begrudge that. I almost like it in a sense that this is organic to our Constitution, of the people, by the people, for the people. And for Semi Bird, for me, this is about those individuals like myself who are students of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who are in this to finish his dream. Those people who work in construction, who serve and patrol in law enforcement, who teach in a classroom, folks who don't have large bank accounts or are not politically connected. Those are the people that I'm doing my very best to passionately give voice to and support. And all I ask is for acknowledgement and integrity to acknowledge that there is a system at work behind the scenes. And when I hear people try to say, oh, there's no establishment, and I know you have not said that, and so please don't read anything out of that, there is an establishment system that is at work. And if we look at this fairly and objectively, could you look at this and see how this could be influencing election outcomes?
Yeah, and
I would say so.
you do get empathy from me, and there's like I said,
you.
if you want to find someone who shares the frustration with the party structure, you have good company in that from me. But I think what I want to end on what you just kind of articulated, and I'm glad you did, and I hope that your supporters and Dave's supporters will take that to heart, which is, sure, we can talk about how the party structure can improve the chances of one particular candidate, but I also don't want to get lost in, there are good people who support you. There are good people who support Dave. They have their reasons for doing it, whether they think it just has a better chance of winning, whether they like your message. And I just don't want to get to this point where it becomes such a vitriolic situation where it's like handing things over to Bob Ferguson. And
Yes.
that's what I'm really scared about. But Semi, I'd never encourage or tell you or call you and say, Semi, you got to get out. This is America. Love it. Run. Do what you want to do. Do what makes you happy. But I think we can do it without, I'll end with this. We the people includes everyone. It includes people who support Dave, people who support you. It includes people who support Bob Ferguson. So I think that's what I'd ask of you is, when you use that phrase, we the people, we the people are going to replace career politicians or whatever it is, remember that is an inclusive term, and it should remain an inclusive term.
Oh, 100%. That is the whole beauty of America, that diverse representation in we the people, again, of the people, by the people, for the people. This is something I am very passionate about, returning us to a true constitutional republic through self-governance of everyday citizens standing up to get engaged, to get involved. And one of the things in terms of the party structure, when I look at these galas and these balls, you typically don't see true representation of we the people. You typically see the same specific demographic and representation. And that is one of the blessings that we have right now, even with our campaign. My story of coming up from nothing into something, this reflects the greatness of America. And so I am passionate about our Constitution. I am passionate about self-governance and restoring that power back to everyday citizens. And our primary system and process will vet this out. And I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And I'll say this again, very clear, without equivocation. If Dave Reichert wins the primary, Semi Bird will be right there with the Reichert sign. If Semi Bird wins the primary, I want Dave and his team out there with the Semi Bird sign. And when I say I want, I would respect and I would be honored if they would. So no, this is an opportunity to bring clarity to any misconception, misperception. And I appreciate the opportunity, Brandi. I really do. And I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's always here for you, Semi. So you keep doing what you're doing, and you're always welcome back on.
Thank you, Brandi. I appreciate you.
All right, that is gubernatorial candidate Semi Bird responding to our criticism of him last week. I'll say of that, look, there is nothing wrong with being focused on whether someone can win. It's not as if there isn't history to show us what candidates are more successful in this state than others. And to be fair, it's not as if Dave Reichert's a shoo-in either. We haven't had a Republican governor in this state for 40 years. And so there's a reason for that. And to be focused on, okay, how many people know who this person is? How much money are they raising? Funds raised are a direct reflection of how much support you have. And so I don't think that's, we shouldn't be easily dismissing, they're just the mainstream, candidate with the most name recognition. Well, that kind of helps, unfortunately, in our current political system. I'll also say is it seems very clear to me that Semi doesn't have plans to abide by a nominating process. I tried to kind of ask that question in a couple different ways, but it seems like he has his own definition of whether he's going to be winning at the time. And he wants to use straw polls or whatever it is. So it just seems to me like he's setting it up for, coming to that moment and saying, well, in his opinion, based on whatever metrics he's using, he's winning. So I'm curious what the Republican Party has to say about that, because they were really hoping to be able to do that to avoid any risk of two Democrats moving forward to the general election. So glad Semi Bird took us up on the opportunity to come back on and to clarify.